posted some YouTube video that was very avant-garde and wonderful, and I thought it was really underrated, where you used multiple tuning systems at once. And I think maybe you were playing it with a live band. Is that correct?
I have done that, yeah, for sure. I do I do, what do people call it now? Polysystemics. Like, I do that for basically everything. Um, Everything I work on. And yeah, when I play with my band, I have a guitar that's in 19 um, equal. Now I have a guitar that has JI fretting for a Neji that I came up with, and then I have, like a couple weirdo things and fretless things and things that I can kind of, twist to be microtonal if I want. And um, mostly the polysystemic stuff is just at least with the live band, is just a result of me not wanting to try to force my bandmates to come along with me, to have to
Right.
get instruments and learn all the stuff. I'd rather just play. And so that's sort of where it comes from.
There's a lot of microtonalists who wouldn't do it because maybe they're worried about the purity of the situation and they want everything to be in the same tuning system. But you don't strike me as the kind of person who needs to have that.
Right. No, I definitely not. And I don't know, my opinion has always become, when you're at that point of you're worrying about like the purity, quote unquote, of your sound, you shouldn't be playing live music anyway at that point. Like, if you're really
That's
that
right.
concerned, right? Because you're at the mercy of room acoustics. There's some drunk guy in the corner on the slot machine yelling about whatever, and it's never a pristine experience. There's always too much low end, there's too much this, there's whatever. At a certain point you just have to play.
I've thought about this many times, actually, that the idea of having more precise microtonal music done live, where things are relatively hair splitting, is sort of idiomatic for a small audience or a small experience. Think about playing a stadium with 10,000 people where you have live sound coming out and like how pitch perception drops with like distance and temperature and whatnot. Like you couldn't do anything that's precise on the level that most microtonalists would like.
Even if we're not talking about microtones, right? Even if we're talking about good old 12 equal, 100 cents a step, oh, that's so much space. It's out of tune all the time live, and no
Yeah,
one cares, right?
right.
Um, if you turn a little bit to the left or right, stuff is entering your ears at different times, like picoseconds apart or whatever. It's
Oh, I
fine.
love those. You
Yeah.
can have you like heard some music where like you've got two speakers in a room and they're blasting something that's probably like periodic or some kind of sound experiment, and you turn your head and the pitch perception changes? I do that. I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
fun.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is fun. I also like the experience of, being able to change the mix as I want, like just walking from this side of the room. It's like, oh, I'm getting a lot of guitar over here. I'm just gonna move over here, and now it's, a lot of keyboard or whatever. Um, yeah, it's very funny. And so, for me, I think the important part of playing in a microtonal band or whatever isn't actually the the smallness of the tones, right? Or the precision of the harmony. It's actually just about how it changes your mentality, right?
Yeah,
In my opinion, at least. Um, but anyway, that's all. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
I'd be very curious to know what sorts of situations you set up for yourself when you're playing polysystemic music live. Before we continue with that, I also would love to ask, I know you're Max McCargar, and we can edit this out. Do you prefer to be known as Sononym, Max? Is one
I
of them
don't care.
secret? You don't care?
I don't care. Um, yeah, I started using a pseudonym, after I'd already made a few things way back when all those things, all those old things I made, by the way, they're trash. Don't listen to them. Um,
Oh, which ones?
but no, I'm not telling you. I think you would probably figure it out pretty quickly.
Okay.
I think because like everything I've ever done is still up on Bandcamp, so you could
Yeah.
find it
You've
if
got
you
a lot
really
of
wanted to.
stuff.
Of all of those, I mean, obviously the Snake and Slug one just came out,
Yeah.
but Humors I feel like holds up the least well, but it's not actually because of anything to do with the composition, I don't think. It's more to do with just like I don't like the way I produced that album,
Mm.
and I would do it differently if given the chance, but whatever, we move on. It's not worth going back at. And
Yeah, it's hard to kind of like move throughout time, and as you get older, you kind of want to edit the past versions of yourself where you maybe have created some music and it's crystallized a certain way, and you're like, man, I wish I would have done that differently. That's something that I've faced with my older composed music too.
I think because people do go back and like do remixes of their old stuff or re-releases, right?
Yeah.
um but I think there the results, at least in my experience, in my opinion, listening to like a remix compared to like an old version of something, the results are not so. It almost, what's a good way of putting it? It almost feels like I'm being lied to in a weird way.
Mm.
Like you as an artist, I know this whoever this person is, right? I know for a fact that you have evolved way more than this remix indicates, right?
Ah.
Because it's like like maybe two or three things are slightly adjusted, and it's like, was it really worth your time and effort to do this? I feel like you probably would have had a better time and gotten more out of it in an artistic sense, in a maybe even sometimes in a monetary sense, depending on the situation, uh, out of just doing something new instead, right? I
Right.
feel like you can just leave the past in the past. But anyway,
It definitely makes you think about like the superhuman sound you can get by just editing things a lot and how unrealistic that is. How would you say you approach microtonal sonorities in your music? Like, what kind of chord structures are you generally looking for?
generally speaking, I think in a more sort of modal sense. So I'm not necessarily thinking about, oh, like, oh yeah, so then I'll go to the sub minor and then that voice leads me over to the, you know, dominant whatever, right? I don't think about things like that. I think about things as being more or less in or out, right?
Right.
Borrowing vocabulary from like jazz, right? Like
Yeah.
you can play outside, right? And you can play inside, right? And so if I have, an instrument that I'm playing that is like, for example, I have a bass guitar that I love to play all the time. But it's not a fretless bass. It's just a regular old fretted 12 equal bass, right?
Yep.
And if I come up with some cool line that I'm like, oh, that's a cool groove, I like that. I'm not going to be like, well, you know, it's in 12 and it's not going to work with this particular chord or whatever, right? So I just let it rock and I go, okay, what can I do on top of this, right? I find personally for me that I like to pick something as sort of a foundational thing for the tune or for the track or whatever. And then all the other stuff is sort of treated like, borrowing extensions or borrowing chords from other keys as an analogy. It's just that in this case, it's being borrowed from other tunings, right? And I find that it's really easy to just kind of stack JI on top of itself over and over and over again because it's all the harmonic series, right? Regardless of, whether it's this prime or that prime or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of my thing is I don't necessarily think about specific chords in like a tonal sense. I think of it more in terms of in out and motion, right? Is this
Yeah.
relatively still or is it moving somewhere? um, and I find that's easiest because if I try to keep track of everything with all the different, this is 17 over whatever and this is
Yeah.
it becomes too much and I would spend more time like writing things down than I would actually like making the music, and at that point it's not worth it to me.
Right. I think it's really hard to achieve that sort of balance. And it seems like maybe even with polysystemic thinking or some kind of advanced JI thinking, it's almost necessary to abandon the part of you that would like to know every single interval and chord and what that's supposed to mean, and you just have to kind of vibe with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think too, like, I'm a very improvisational musician, right?
Yeah,
Like the band that I play with that we were talking about earlier, all of it is entirely improvised. We don't plan a single note of it. Um, and when I record stuff at home, it's pretty similar. I'll just kind of like have a rough idea of like, oh, I want some sort of groove that's like maybe this many beats. I'll plug in some simple, I'll program some simple drum thing, and then I'll go, okay, I'm going to try playing this instrument over it and see what happens, right? Um, Oftentimes that's what I'm doing. And so if I'm trying to think about and know about everything that's happening, one, it is impossible. It's just paralyzing. You're
right.
never going to be able to think of everything. And then two, it kind of ruins the mystery, right? Like I'm here to be surprised by the music just as much as someone listening to it for the first time, right? And that's sort of my thing. I want to meet the music where it's at and let it tell me what it needs and not like try too hard to sort of cram it into a particular geometry that may or may not, you know, end up making sense.
I can hear that in quite a bit of your music, the just the freedom, I think, to explore and to sort of go where the instincts tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
What
I really try to do that. Try to tap into that as much as possible because I find also it just sounds better. Like I just like listening to it more, which
yeah.
is ultimately the point, right?
Yeah. Do you so when you and the band are improvising, I know you said you don't plan a note. Do you plan anything? Because I know there's various levels of planning, right?
Right.
So I'm very curious at what sort of levels you guys inhabit.
Yeah. So we have sort of a mental framework that we work with that I call conversational and adversarial. So basically, it's like if we're playing stuff that is conceptually more or less on the same page, right? Like it could be in multiple different areas. It could be like, oh, we're playing in the same time signature. We're playing in the same key more or less, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
playing or even if we're just playing in the same sort of mood, right? Same dynamic range, same etc. You get the idea. That's conversational, right? Because we're in agreement with each other. And then there's the other side, which is where we're intentionally disrupting that, that flow, right? Where we're going, okay, everyone else is playing in four. I'm going to play in five, but
Yeah.
then I'm not just going to play a straight five so it becomes a polyrhythm. Maybe what I'll do is I'll play five and then I'll kind of just wait a second or wait 2 seconds and not even count it and then just come back in totally off time, right? Or intentionally, deliberately play, out of key. And then when someone shifts over to your key, you shift over to a different key to keep it out of key.
Yeah.
So it's like stepping on each other's toes on purpose. If someone's taking a solo, just jumping in and playing like uh some loud noisy bullshit. Yeah, so it's all totally it's there's not any of it planned in a strictly musical sense. It's all mental. And we do discuss a little bit before based on like the mood and the environment that we're in. So we play a lot of shows with multiple bands on the bill because when you're a local musician, that's just what you got to do if you want to even get 10 people out to your show,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Um, and so, you know, there aren't that many bands like us in Portland. So we end up playing with all kinds of people. The last gig we opened for a like very, very sort of old school, like think like original King Crimson and Yes and like Emerson Lake and Palmer prog rock band.
Yeah.
Um, and then a sort of more modern, like mathy kind of rock band, right? And so knowing that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to, and then looking out at the crowd and seeing what their sort of, energy is and going, okay, I'm going to play more like this today, you know.
Yeah,
But that's really the extent of it. Everything else is just reacting to what other people are doing in the moment.
very cool. I think I may have found the video. The band is LDY Butterfly?
Yeah, Lady Butterfly.
Lady
Yes.
Butterfly. Okay.
We did a live album in a where we basically took made rented some studio time, and then we played a old, very old, like I think it's 1928 maybe, um, black and white surrealist film on the whiteboard, and then we improvised to the film. It's basically a live rescoring of it,
Oh,
um,
that's so cool.
and that's on there, and I highly recommend it because our sax player, gorgeous,
Oh,
played brilliantly, um, and yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it was interesting because we had like practiced it a couple times, like just playing along to the movie. But then when we played it with the audience in the studio, this is a small audience, like maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 people.
yeah.
It really made certain things feel so much more, visceral, right? Um, which I think is also part of why we don't like to plan too much. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you have a plan, if you're too rigid about it, you're sort of forcing yourself to make a choice once the plan comes up against reality, right? Once it comes up against the thing that you're, in the room with. And it I think it can leave people a little rigid and unadaptable, right? Which is not what I want to be. I want to always be ready to just go with the flow.
Right.
One moment in particular that I remember very vividly where I didn't notice it so much in the moment, but I noticed it on listening back,
Yeah.
where I was playing. So I was playing the Soma Terra, the synth that kind of looks like a wooden coffee table. I don't know if you've seen those. It's got these brass caps on it that you press with your fingers,
Oh, I've seen
and that
that.
controls. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I was playing that. But yeah, no, the way it works is you can tune the individual. There's 12 caps, right? So you can have a 12-note scale. Um, and you can tune each cap individually by like holding a certain thing down and then just, pressing up or down on a thing. And I actually like it because you don't get to just plug in numbers. You have to do it by ear, right?
Oh, great.
Which means that it's sort of like tuning a guitar where there's always just a little bit of beating,
Yeah.
right? It's never perfect. And I like that, right? Or what I use that thing for is at the time in that recording, I also found the timestamp for that moment I was talking about. It's 22 minutes and 40 seconds.
2240.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
But yeah, no, and what I did was I was playing the 19 equal guitar, and then my keyboard player, who also handles most of the low end as like a synth bass thing, he's playing 12 equal. And obviously saxophone can have a little bit of wiggle room, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so what I did was I tuned the Terra to a neji that is where the fourths and fifths are, or the fourth and the fifth, I should say, is within 1 cent of 19's fourth and fifth, but then like the second, the third, all this other stuff was within a decimal point of 12 equal. So it was like
Oh,
this sort of it was supposed to be like this sort of bridge between what I was doing on the guitar and then what was happening with the keyboard. It's like this middle zone. Um, and I was like, maybe this will work. And then it just, I tried it and it did. So I kept it.
is that the same Neji you mentioned earlier for your second microtonal guitar?
No, no. So the one for the Terra, every interval is over 65. I could probably find the SEL file and send it to you if you wanted.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then the one I did for the other guitar, it's all over 34. So
Mhm.
it's like second octave of 17. Um, yeah, let me see if I can find that. Because I
Neat.
do have all of my tunings.
I hear it. You guys are kind of like playing in parallel. In the moment at 2240, the microtonality of your part makes it kind of jump out a little bit from what you would expect a normal line in thirds to be. That's very cool.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and so like those sorts of things, right? That's what I'm really looking for when I'm playing music, right? And there's no way that that moment would be even close to as exciting if we had composed it and planned it out. You know what I mean? That's like, the whole idea is to find those things that you either wouldn't have thought of or you wouldn't have thought were notable otherwise. Um, so that's sort of the deal.
It's really a vehicle to composition, I think, that kind of spontaneity you get from things like improvisation. And I feel like if musicians don't train themselves to improvise, they very much lose a really interesting part of what they could be doing on the instrument, both as a composer and a performer.
Yeah, for sure. And I personally, like, I do my day job is I teach music, right?
Oh, me too.
Um, yeah, that's why I think we get along, at least in part. Um, no, but I really try to make a point to my students because some students, they're really gung-ho about learning how to improvise, right? They want to be Jimi Hendrix, they want to be Jimmy Page or whatever, and they want to shred their guitar, and that's fine, right?
Yeah.
um, and then hopefully you can maybe direct them towards something that's more robust than just being a copycat of someone who is in the past, right?
Yes.
um, or if they want to be a copycat, that's fine too, right? um, and then there's some students that hate it because they're and I relate to this, they're a little bit overthinkers, and they're like, well, what if I play something that's wrong or bad or et cetera, right? And it's a thing where I personally feel that you're not only are you robbing yourself of something really cool that you could be doing just on the instrument, like you said, you're also kind of denying a sort of, in my view, a fundamental part of like human communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we agree that I imagine that at least some of music is about communicating with other people, conveying something that can't be conveyed linguistically, right? Um, and like, do you know anyone? Maybe you do, I don't know, but how many people do you know who, when they get up in the morning, they pre-plan every single sentence that they're going to say throughout the entire day? And when someone asks them a question they're not prepared for, they don't have a way of answering, right?
Oh, that's a great question. I do know one very reclusive person who would be shocked that I mentioned them namelessly on the air, who maybe is close to that, but I doubt they would ever do something like plan a sentence.
Right. And it's like, even if you do plan more or less, like, oh, when I go to the grocery store and this person, the cashier asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to respond with this, right? Because, like, I get it. If you have like social anxiety, doing that can be helpful, and that's totally fine. But, no one plans, at least no one that I've ever heard of, plans 100% of all of their linguistic communication, right? There's some element of spontaneity that has to be involved just in order to kind of exist in public, right? Or
Yeah.
exist in the world at all, right? And that's improvisation, right? That's
Yeah.
just part of like being a person is you have to improvise a little bit.
Yeah.
So
What do you think is one of the most dissonant moments you've ever had in the band? Uh, and did the polysystemic playing help with that? Like something where you had a chord that maybe really had a lot of notes in it or was really unusual.
yeah, I can think of I can't necessarily think of like I can't necessarily rank moments like in a tier list like S tier, this moment of this recording, of this show or whatever.
I would
Um
watch the shit out of that video if you did.
this chord, right? Um uh this chord is F tier because it's an F.
Boo, F
No,
minor.
yeah, F minor. Who wants that? The minor four to C. Ugh.
Yeah.
Plagal cadence. No, but um, I was just teaching someone about that today, actually. But anyway, there's been quite a few times where there's a chord I reach for in 19, and it's like a sub minor add flat nine, I think. I know earlier I was just going on
Oh,
about how I don't think about this, but
oh, that's
then I
cool.
did it anyway, right?
It's like,
Um,
yeah,
and it's actually got a lot of that like that buzz, that concordance buzz that you're looking for, in 19, at least the way I tune my open strings. And so I'm like, this is a cool chord. I'm going to remember this one, right? But then often what I like to do is I'll just shift it up by you know, I guess it's not a semitone. It's a
like 1/19th
nine,
of an octave,
yeah, 1/19th, right?
a chromatic semitone.
There we go. There we go. Um, because my keyboard player will be playing in B, right? And my 19 guitar is a 7 string, so it has a low B. And I tune that to A440's B, right?
Okay,
Um, and so we'll be playing in that key. And if my keyboard player's not playing too much upper register stuff, that chord actually works really nicely, right? Um, I'll play it starting on the F sharp, so it's really the fifth of the B, and then etc. Um, which I guess then makes the diminished third the like 19's harmonic seventh approximation of it, which is not.
oh, yeah, I think I know what you mean. Like, if keyboard player is playing B, and your F sharp, sub minor flat
Sub.
9 contains, like, F
Yeah,
sharp, G, and A flat, your A flat is the flat 7/4 in 19.
right. Yeah. I'll hit that and we'll be like, yeah, that's nice, and then I'll just shift it up, and it kind of makes the whole thing crumble into dust. And I really like doing that because there's that moment. My keyboard player, he doesn't know he doesn't know the theory of microtonality at all. Not really. I mean, a little bit. Um, but he has really good ears. His ears are way better than mine
Hmm.
by far. He has the best ears in our band. Um, and so, like when we started jamming with him, he would use the pitch bend wheel to just like he'll hit a note and just pitch bend it up to be in tune with what I was doing.
Oh!
Or he hit a chord and do the same thing. Yeah, really good ears and a really like able and like exciting improviser because he's just like so he doesn't worry about like playing something that's not right because he has that confidence that he knows he'll be able to find it, right?
Yeah.
um and so I like with him because by just moving that chord up a little bit, there's that moment where I get to look at him and he kind of goes for a second and then resets. um and I don't think he knows that he does it, but I know, and that's what matters.
That's beautiful. That's that sub minor chord with a flat 9. That's a really interesting chord in 19 because I don't think I've heard about it, but the idea of having like 2 seconds in a row stacked up that are small enough that they sound like they're splitting a minor third in half. That's something I've explored in a lot of chords, and 19 has that really interesting feature in my opinion where like I kind of call it neutralese. It's a very silly name for this, but like the idea of like
Mm-hmm.
stacking a bunch of neutral seconds in a row to generate a scale in microtonality.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Mercury Tree uses it a lot in their music. I almost think 19's minor second is so wide that it can sound a little bit like that. and that chord might be a way to sort of get at that aesthetic, and maybe the chord still sounds a little bit like in a minor realm because it's sub minor, and the sub minor third isn't flat enough that it sounds like a second yet.
Right. Yeah, I think that that could be it. I don't know. Or it's yeah, it is interesting. This the minor seconds in 19 or minor second. I don't know. What do you call them
Well, one
octaves?
19th of an octave is a chromatic semitone, and two
Right.
19ths is a diatonic semitone.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting like sort of working with those just in general, right? Um because I do a lot of when I'm playing 19, I do a lot of sort of I call it pseudo semaphore, where it's not the pentatonic version and it's not the nonatonic version.
Oh,
It's a heptatonic version
yeah.
where I've basically taken Aeolian and just like flattened the third and flattened the sixth by one more chromatic semitone.
So like C D E double flat F G A double flat B flat C.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah, that's
right?
neat.
Because it's just like I mean, for one, it's easier for my brain because I'm so used to playing the Aeolian shape from playing regular guitar for my entire life, right? Um, but then also I think the reduction in just the number of notes um, leaves more room for other people I'm playing with to have something to say, to have space, right? And
Yeah,
melodically, it just feels more in line with what they're doing, right? Going back to the whole conversational adversarial thing, right?
absolutely. That sounds like a great scale to include in that context. And really interesting to hear your perspective because I don't think that any of the other people who are as into polysystemic music as you have been in this kind of environment. Like it's usually something they've created on the computer to collide tuning systems together on purpose. Maybe Stephen James Taylor is someone who's done this, but it's quite hard to think of people who have. Another thing this brings to mind for me is the idea that microtonalists, they get pretty hung up on accuracy on intervals, right? And I
Mhm.
find that if you have drone music where there's a tone that's running throughout that sounds like the tonic just because it's the lowest note and it's supporting everything, you can play modes that have really differing intonation and should clash, but they can kind of sound like they're the same scale. Like you mentioned this like
Mhm.
Aeolian scale that I mentioned, built it on C. Like your piano player could be playing C Aeolian and you could be playing this C Aeolian, but the third and the sixth are double flatted instead of flatted, and probably you could get people to just hear that as a 7 note scale with some inflection. And that's another thing that splitting too many hairs means that people won't exactly admit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think too, right? Like with what is the cent difference between like 19's like 63-ish cents, I think, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's like 63.7 or something like that. I don't know exactly.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I can divide for you. Here we go. Yeah, 63.1 cents. Nailed it.
cool, perfect, right? And so that difference is relatively wide when you compare it to 12, right? Like that's 37-ish, right?
Yeah.
Um, and just looking at it on paper and being someone who's immersed in sort of the microtonal world, you would look at that and go, that's way too wide. Like, people would throw a fit over hearing that. They'd be like disgusted, right? Um,
Yeah.
but then in actual practice, you listen to a vocalist sing, right? Like a soul vocalist who they do a lot of runs, right? Or you're listening to an oud player, right? Or a um sarod player, in like the Hindustani tradition, right? And they're doing all kinds of crazy inflections all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds great. Like, you know, it's such a thing where I think personally, and to your point, right, about like having a drone and then playing different sort of intonations of roughly the same structure or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, every interval is good. And if you're a composer, it's on you to figure out how to make it work for you. And maybe you just decide you don't want to, and that's fine, right? No hate there. Um, but any sort of belief that, oh, this is just unusable, or this is that, or this is that, I think just doesn't hold water when you actually just go for it and try it,
Yeah,
right?
100%. I've kind of made it my hobby to stock up a list of songs that use such and such unusable intervals. So that if someone says, "Oh, this is unusable," I can be like, "Actually, here's this great piece." And usually, what happens if I do that is then the person is like, "Oh, I don't listen to that genre."
Yeah. It's like, okay, but that wasn't the original argument, man.
Right? Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would
yeah.
be really curious to know how, as a guitarist, you treat licks where you might do some bending in microtonal improvisation, because I know that like
Hmm.
in blues playing you have to do a lot of bending to get certain microtonal inflections for blue notes, and
Hmm.
maybe there's something in your like microtonal guitar playing with your band that feels similar, like either matching the other players or maybe like bending on certain notes to express them a certain way.
Yeah, so what I do is I use one of these. This is just a little, it's made by, they call it Black Mountain Picks, right? And it's just a slide ring. So it just attaches to my finger like this, and I can play all of my chord shapes, but also play slide, right?
Yeah.
And that's because I'm a big fan of Derek Trucks, um, who, you know, is, in my opinion, one of the two greatest living guitar players. Um, the other being Kurt Rosenwinkel. So what I'll do is I don't bend notes so much anymore, like the guitar technique bend, but I do use this to hit the in between stuff that I can't hit with my frets, right?
Right.
And the Neji guitar that I have now, it actually has inlays. Um, they sort of look like, it kind of looks like the night sky almost, which is fun. That are guideposts for specific intervals in that Neji. Because basically, the problem that we encountered when I was working with my builder on how to design this thing was, okay, if we do the frets in such a way that everything is perfectly in tune, then you're going to have like, you know, frets all over the place, and it's not going to be very playable, right? At least
Right.
not for the kind of stuff I want to play, right?
Hmm.
That improvisational, you know, jazz guitar style. Um, and so what we did was we ended up having just straight frets, right? So it's in tune with the Neji along the E strings, but then the other strings are out of tune, right? And it's like, it would be really difficult to, especially for a live setting, fine tune all of every single string to get it all to work, right?
Right, I
Um,
see.
which I'm not sure is even, I mean, it's probably possible, right? It has to be, it would just require like, you know, like a digital tuner that you've custom made to do this. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't know how I would do it, right? And so what we did was we compromised by just having it be this straight up and down fretting, but then the inlays lead me to those properly intonated notes, and um, the frets just land where they land. And so I basically have the Neji along the two E strings, and then I have the inlays for finding the other notes within that E rooted Neji. And then every single string is just its own line or own parallel Neji for A440 and D and G and etc.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that means I really get a slightly more expansive palette than just saying it's a Neji would imply, right?
Right.
Um, which is, you know, more for me is good, I guess.
Yeah. I got to play a JI fretted instrument last year where the frets ran just across the fretboard straight, meaning that each individual string was tuned to that JI scale, but then of course it creates more notes than just the individual first scale you thought of that would run along the string.
Right, right. Yeah. And like that's something that I like to do at home.
Hmm.
Um, because I can open up Scale Workshop and I can hold down a key and, or make it sustain a note and like tune it with like a sine wave or semi sine or whatever, so it's perfect or as close to perfect as a guitar can be. But in a live situation, you walk into a venue most of the time an hour before the doors open, an hour before the show starts. And then if there's a band before you get 15 minutes to set up your amp, your pedal board if you have one, your other stuff, your keyboard players setting up their thing, plugging
Right.
all of it in, blah, blah, blah. You don't have time to just sit there and, okay, let me tune with my headphones on. There's people being
Right.
noisy and it's not feasible, right?
Right.
Um, and so it ends up being what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think those sort of external, factors lead to more interesting results, at least for me anyway.
And it also seems to jive a little bit with your ideas of being polysystemic, because you could even say it's a polysystemic system all in one guitar if you just move from string to string as well.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and it kind of gets to the point where, like, um, to me, the ultimate goal is to not even think of things in terms of like separate systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because obviously, logistically, it's much easier to load this, I have Piano Tech open and I load this tuning into it. And then
Yeah.
I have Surge XT open and I load this tuning into it. Cool. Now I'm doing some sort of polysystemic thing. And you can think of that as just one aggregate complex scale, right? Um, and in my brain, what I ultimately want is to just be able to think of the entire pitch spectrum as just one big thing,
Yeah.
right? It's like a ocean, right, or whatever, like a large body of water, and I'm just taking out individual droplets, right,
Yeah.
with like a little, I don't know, a turkey baster or something, and I'm just dropping them into my bucket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, uh, so almost, I guess, moving in a sort of free pitch direction
I
is
see.
the goal, I guess.
Fascinating. So, what prompted your decision for a 19-tone guitar?
Um, Well, I decided on it pretty early on in my learning of all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I I had been introduced to I'd always sort of flirted with microtones. Like I knew what they were, roughly speaking. Tones in between tones, like, you know, when I was, I don't know, 14, 13, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, And so sometimes I would do sort of like finger painty kind of stuff where I'd just like tune a string slightly sharp and not really think about it and go, okay, I'm going to try this now. Um, and then when I got introduced to, um, the music of, well, like Amelia, right? I was like, oh, there's actually, I can't remember exactly when that was. It was a long time ago. Um, maybe maybe it was 2020, 2019, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
um and I went, oh, you can actually be more formal about this without needing to go and study in India or Turkey or etc., right? Because I
Yeah.
had known about, like, oh yeah, they do stuff that's microtonal to us in India and all that stuff, but um I was like, oh, there's a way you can know this theory without needing to go learn a different language or travel halfway around the globe, right?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
so anyway, that's a long digression. Basically, I decided on it pretty early on when I was learning this stuff because, one, EDOs made more sense to my brain,
Oh yeah.
right? Because obviously I'm a guitar player. I'm coming from 12 equal, right? Like, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
When I need a
Um,
little thumbs up, the icon pops up. I'm trying to make it pop up again. Ah!
yeah, yeah, there it
It
is.
does it for you, but it
Yeah,
doesn't do it for me.
yeah, it's because it's a, this is my ultimate shame. I have to admit I use a Mac. So it's actually built
Me
into
too.
the Mac software. I don't know if it's like maybe you've disabled it. I don't know, or maybe it's
Probably.
like maybe it's not available on certain OSs. I don't know, but um, EDOs made more sense to me, right?
Yeah.
And then two, I was trying to figure out what I could get that had the most possibility space that was still playable according to my own estimation of my own abilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I really liked the sound of 31, but I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to play 31. You know,
Right.
what I mean? It just doesn't seem. And I know that there are people who do it. Like, I think Blair Benzel has a 31 guitar. I
Maybe,
think
yes.
I think I've seen that. I think Here Between the Lines used a 31 guitar,
Yes, they did.
um, but they didn't want to play it in the way that I wanted to play it,
Right.
right? Um, and Blair does a lot more composed, like very specific kind of music, right? And so I was like, I don't think I could improvise in 31. Could I improvise in 30? Probably not. Also 29, I just kind of went
You went
down.
down and you were like, what's.
Yeah, what seems reasonable to me, right? And I wanted something full fretted because I had seen the kite guitar, but
Right.
I didn't at the time want to have to introduce too much new stuff to myself, right?
Right.
I was like, I'm already introducing a whole new fretting that I'm going to have to get used to, and then having to adjust my open tuning as well, and all of my chord shapes and all this stuff, right? Um, and so I went for something that was the largest playable thing I could get that still had a diatonic scale that
Right.
resembled what I was used to. And that's really how I ended up with that.
That's exactly how I feel about 19. And I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but hypothetically, I'd be really curious to hear your impressions about like guitars that are sort of in the 20 to 21 to 22 range in terms of fretting, because I find 19 really playable and I'm still able to count everything, even though there's slightly more frets. And at 20, that's starting to wane a little bit. And by the time I'm at 22, like I can play open shapes and do a lot of that stuff, but I find it to be a lot more cumbersome. And 19 definitely seems to be like on this golden borderline, I think, for guitar playing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know. I've never tried a 22 guitar. I guess that would be the one I would want to jump up to if I were to jump up to any other one, you know? Because
Yeah.
just there's like 22 has a sort of, I guess, a proven track record at this point. Um, and Yeah, I've seen um the one, oh, I forget his name. Maybe you mentioned him earlier. I don't know his name. I think he's Australian, and he
Jack
has
Tickner?
maybe he's got the guitar that is 22, but half of it is like a fretless brass thing. I think it's a
Oh,
baritone, and
yes. Samuel Taylor.
yeah. Okay, cool. So you were right. Um, Look at you. Got a memory, got a cranium.
Oh, yeah.
Um, um, yeah, I'd be curious because I wonder if he went for the half brass fretless thing because he felt that the upper frets were just not going to be playable on a 22, or if he thought, or if it was just a design choice, uh, you know, ancillary to that. Like it was just, oh, I just wanted fretlessness, right?
I think he's aiming for both. You pointed out, that you heard Zia's music and realized that things could be done in a more formal way.
Mhm.
Um, and that non-Western microtonality would sound microtonal to us. Um, and I think maybe the use of that might be how some people might use the word Zen harmonic. Do you have any opinions about the definition of that word?
Ooh, ooh.
Since this
Okay,
is called Now and Zen.
right. I actually really don't like either word. Um,
Right. They're both
I
problematic.
They both have their issues, right? And so I kind of just default to whichever one someone else is using, or if it's like someone I know doesn't know anything, I go with the one that I suspect is more known colloquially, which would be microtonality, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, my opinion is that the problem with the word Zen is that it really does imply an otherness to it that I think is wrong historically, because like again, if we go back to the blues, right?
Yeah.
Blues musicians have been doing that since the literally the dawn of recorded music and before, right?
Yes.
Uh and of course we can talk about Bach and the well temperament stuff, and we can talk about um, you know, Pythagoras and the all of that stuff, right? Although I always like to say, like we credit Pythagoras for that, but it was discovered like a couple hundred years prior in China. Gotta rep my people. Um, no, I'm just kidding. Um, only a little bit though. So anyway, it implies this otherness that's I think wrong historically for the sort of cultural stream that you and I are a part of.
Yeah.
Um, but then I do think, and I'm sorry to anyone who might. Actually, I'm not sorry. If you're offended
Yeah.
by me being a woke leftist, you deserve to be offended. Anyone listening to this, I'm courting a little controversy for you, so that way you can get those views.
We got
Um,
the spicy pepper emojis on the screen
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I got this on, Um, um, and I think it can also be like implicitly, very implicitly, sort of politically problematic, right? Because again, right, like Indian people are not a different species, right?
Yeah.
They're not an exotic other. They're just other people that live on this planet. Same thing with Turkish people, same thing with Iraqi people, Iranian people, Mongol, et cetera, Chinese, Korean, whatever,
Yeah, anybody.
um, Southeast Asian, right? Yeah, like, yeah, anybody. Um, and I think when we set up mental walls between ourselves and other people, when we really don't need to, even if it's like this, so it's really an inconsequential arena, right? Overall, in the grand scheme. I think that all of those little walls contribute to making a large wall in the end. And that's not what this planet needs currently.
Mm.
Um, and it's something that I discourage in the people I spend time with, right? I discourage thinking like that in my students, in my peers, in anyone, right? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
to me, I don't like the word so much, but I'm not gonna like go around like I'm not gonna be like Steven, you gotta change the name of the show. You can't call it, you know what I mean?
That'd be really
Like,
funny if I did, just briefly.
yeah, just for this one episode.
Just for this one episode,
Um,
and then we change it back.
yeah, what would you even call it though? What's the alternate title?
What's a good pun on microtonality that's like now and then except now and then? I don't know. Uh
That's fine. We can't all be good at everything. You can leave
it's true.
jokes to other people, and you can be really good at transcribing engine de poitrine and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, and their fans will want me to transcribe them forever.
Yeah. Hey, views. Get those views.
Get
Make the
those
number go up.
get those sweet angine views. I'm trying to get as much of that in as I can while still preserving my own sanity because of course it's just it's a complete tangent to what I've been
Right.
doing.
Obviously, I saw the KEXP thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, and when I saw it, I saw that there was more. It was more frets than should be there, and I went, "Oh, okay, this is going to be another microtonal math rock band." I just knew it as soon as I looked, and sure enough, it was. But I didn't bother to count the frets. I didn't bother to try to actually figure out what the system was, and I'm a bad friend. I haven't watched the transcriptions. What system are they using?
It's just 24.
Okay, I suspected as much, but I wanted to be sure.
Yes, but I don't believe it was measured. I did get several
Mm,
messages telling me that like if the guitar is there and there's 12 EDO fretting, you can stick a fret in between and eyeball it equidistantly and it should pretty much work, which I think was
right.
what happened.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
But I haven't
Um,
quite confirmed that. I haven't confirmed that in a research-based sense. It's just that, like, when I did that, people told me that. There was a really, really funny comment on the Sarnia's video where, like, one guy was, like, very determined that they were using Pythagorean tuning and the purity of the spheres, and it, like, didn't make mathematical sense. And I, like, posted this really thoughtful response and asked for sources, and he just went completely silent, and it was so sad. Because I
uh,
really wanted to see where his weird thoughts would lead.
yeah. Yeah, the comments on any YouTube video, but especially on microtone videos, they get interesting. They get interesting sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Coming back to Zen harmonic and that word, I have had a really strange relationship with it because I always like when I first learned about it, I knew that just describing things as other wasn't quite going to cut the mustard. And as you mentioned, it can be dehumanizing. But I have preferred to see it lately as a term that explains relative translation. But I suppose uh in a view where like you don't want systems to exist and be compared against each other, then that I think loses a lot of meaning. But I really like the idea of like, having a Sevish song in 22 and he translates it to 12, but everyone's used to hearing it in 22. So
mhm.
what's the version in 12 supposed to be? What do you call that?
Right, right. That is an interesting point. Yeah, I don't know. I think I think it's and I've also flip-flopped on this. Like at first, right, when I was first learning, I was like, "Oh, this is a much better word than microtonality." Because,
Yeah.
we can talk about all the issues with that word, right? But then I came around to just being like, I don't know about it. I think in that like definition, that's totally fair. And I think, like you're someone that I would trust with that word because
Mm,
like
I see. Yes.
you're a thoughtful person who would consider those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, as a broader word to be used to communicate about these sorts of things with just anybody, maybe it gets a little more dicey. At a certain point, I just use whatever word makes sense for the context and the person I'm talking to, and I call it a day, right? And a lot of the time, I would prefer to just say, I just do, experimental pitch, right? Or
Yeah.
experimental intonation and call it a day, right?
I think it's really funny that the word Zen harmonic invites constant comparisons to 12 tone equal temperament. But when I methodically do that comparison and like prove that something is far from 12 because of how far the chord progressions have drifted, people are almost like less interested because I brought 12 into the conversation. But that's what the word is being defined against. So, you know,
Right.
I guess there's is somewhat of a feeling that we want to escape all discourse about 12, but if you're going to define yourself in opposition to 12, there's going to be logically some back and forth from an
Right.
analytical perspective.
Inherently, it has to exist in opposition to a hegemony, right?
Yes, right.
And if that hegemony, like if they got what they wanted and 12 totally, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying this is what everyone who explores these things wants, but
Right.
I know for a fact that there are some of y'all out there who want this, right? For 12 to just totally disappear, right? And be supplanted by something else. Okay, well, now if you want to keep using that word, you got to exist in opposition to that orthodoxy now,
Yeah,
right?
whatever it
Um,
happens to be.
whatever it happens to be, right? Um, and so it becomes this whole, like theoretical, because I don't ever think 12 is going anywhere, right? I mean, obviously it's not going anywhere.
Oh
And
yeah.
it shouldn't. It's a great system when you're like for its purpose, right? You're just kind of always in this sort of theoretical zone of having to be against this thing that is mainstream,
Yes.
right? Which, I don't know if that's a recipe for a peaceful life or for monetary success or whatever it is that you're looking for, right?
It makes me think of well, I was talking to somebody about uh cultures that don't have tuning systems, which brings in mind, the idea you mentioned of not having to have competing systems of logic, but just, an overall sea of pitches that you pick from. So I'm going to be trying to research that more because I think that sort of freedom to move between systems would be something that we would see in a more progressively minded musical group of people who put their money where their mouth is, microtonal wise. Like the
Uh-huh.
band that you do, right? Like we should see that a lot more.
Right. I mean, my whole thing is I try to recruit people as much as possible. Our last gig we played with someone um, who was doing samples on in Ableton,
Yeah.
who had never performed live music ever before.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and it was just, someone I knew from Discord and just happened to live in Portland. And I was like, hey, do you want to sit in with us? And they said, yeah. And that was that. And it was, you hear that and you think, oh, okay, that you can imagine all the catastrophes that could come about of that. It was so smooth. It was flawless, right? Well, not flawless, but
Really cool.
if it was flawless, it wouldn't be fun, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, it was really cool. And that's really what I want it to be like in that band, right? Is I want it to be something that anyone can jump into, right? Um, I started that band actually before I got into microtonality, but it was February 2020. So
Oh, I see.
you know what happened after
In
that, right?
March 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Something.
yeah.
That.
We played one gig and then all that happened.
God.
Um yeah, and then originally I started it as sort of a response to, like jazz gatekeepers, right? Because it's a thing, right? You go to a jam session and you get vibed because they don't like the way you're playing, right? Um, and to me, that's just so antithetical to what jazz is supposed to be about, right? Um, it's like why is there an orthodoxy? That's insane, right? And so I wanted it to be something where I wanted to craft something where literally anyone can play
Mm.
and participate in the thing that I think is most interesting about jazz, which is the improvisation and the exploration of harmony, right? Without it being a tightrope walk of, if this person doesn't know what they're doing, if they haven't practiced giant steps in all 12 keys, it's going to sound like shit. You know what I mean? Like just being able to play, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, that's sort of the idea.
Do you encourage audience participation?
We have before. It's kind of hard because I try not to talk during like before or during the set.
Right.
Um, I usually talk after, which means that I don't have the opportunity to encourage it. But we definitely react to the audience, and so uh, anyone out there listening to this, if you come to one of our shows and you just start banging on a table, we will react to that and play along with you. Just so you know,
Oh, incredible.
we would be really excited if someone did that. But no, we
Great.
did play a gig once in a boxing gym, and uh, we made it clear beforehand, like, hey, if any of you want to hit the bags while we're playing, we would highly encourage that because we'll just treat it like percussion, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I think would be really cool to do more of. It's just the opportunity isn't there a lot of the time.
That's so cool. Yeah. Very free. Well, I think this has been a fantastic episode. Thank you, good
Cool.
sir, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Had a
Thank
great
you for
time.
having me. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
it was fun. And it's fun to actually talk to you live in person
Yeah.
because I've always been like, oh, Steven's a cool guy, and Steven's like you know, got he's got a good head on his shoulders. Um and so it's nice to like, you know, make it sort of, I don't know, official in a sense.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on in Portland these days, microtonally too much, but I've been talking to Ben Spees a little bit, so it'd be
Mhm.
cool if I could come up there and say hi to everybody. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be cool. I know you had Richie on at one point.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, Richie's doing his thing. I think he just had a performance of some music he composed recently. I wasn't able to make it, but I think Timmy Barnett was playing some violin for it. And I don't know if you know Timmy, but
Yeah, we went to
Timmy's
school together.
oh, okay. Well, there you go. So yeah, Timmy's insanely good
Yeah,
at what he does. Yeah, it feels like Portland. We got some stuff going on. We got some stuff.
yeah, of course. Wonderful. So, Max McCargar, that's you, and you have
That's me.
the YouTube channel Sononym, and then Lady Butterfly is the band spelled LDYBTTRFLY.
Yeah, no vowels except for Y.
Yeah, exactly. Just like they teach you in school.
Just like they teach you in school. They teach you
Ex-
don't ever use vowels, only Y.
exactly. All right. Well, thanks, good sir. I'll see you later.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Stephen.
The music you just heard is the last track of Sononym's album Avant Orientalism. If you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, you can leave a review on iTunes and spread the word through social media. We appreciate all of our supporters on Patreon, our Zen Harmonic patrons, as well as our Zen Harmonic gods, Jacob G., Peter Jung, Jundai Bates Kobushigawa, Naren Rattan, Matthew Sheeran, Hector McGuffin, Christopher Bailey, Leland O. Weigel, Amy Coleman, Jill Weigel, and Tina Harmon Carto. Remember, if you're not already doing so, you can support the podcast on Patreon. The lowest tier is only $5 a month, and you get to support a great cause promoting microtonal music in all its delightful forms. Link is in the description. You also get access to behind-the-scenes information on many of Stephen Weigel's microtonal projects, such as numerous transcriptions, covers, or other surprises, and bonus episodes as well. Did you know Now and Zen already has well over 100 episodes? That's right, there's lots of bonus episodes you're missing if you're not part of the Patreon account. A little bit goes a long way, and if you support, you get to be a factor in committing to musical uniqueness and diversity at the table of ideas. I cover songs and get to transcriptions based on patron requests often. Fly Me to the Moon in 29-tone equal temperament is out on YouTube, and Girls Just Want to Have Fun is on the way. This episode, featuring Max McCargar, aka Sononym, is part of Experi-MAY-ntal Music May. Our next guest, as part of this theme, will be the microtonal band Neptune. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time on Now and Zen.